Hello, everybody. I am so excited today. We get to talk to Lowell Johnson. Lowell has been to TELOS physically, which is actually something truly amazing that I am so excited. I'm just dying to start this. But Lowell, thank you again for being here. Meeting you at the conference in Mount Shasta was really, truly a life-changing experience when you took us to the mountain, to a very special place full of energy. And, you know, we got to do, I'm lucky I got to go twice with you and get to know you. And I feel like you really connected. And now I'm super honored to have you here. But to get started, I want you to tell people your background before we start with the whole story. So I'll let you go ahead and start with this amazing journey.
Okay. Well, I will, but before I do that, I want to respond to, kind of your lead in here. And there are always things I get out of those connections too. That was the first time during the Shasta conference that I'd taken more than 2 people up to these energetic vortex places. So in my mind, this was a test. I wanted to see if people that vibrated the same way, whether their experience would be profound. Perhaps not in my same way, because our journeys are all different, but you proved to me that it was one more validation. Holy cow, that I'm not the only one that senses the energy that's there in Shasta. I had only heard about it before. So now is a good time to digress, and I can tell you what I know about Shasta, how I got there, what my background is. Have I been a spiritual searcher all my life? In a way, yes. I knew that there was something greater. I believed that whatever variations of God that was, and how I was conditioned through church and school. And, we all have our views of that along the way. But I didn't get the answers I was really looking for there, that connection with that kind of source energy. I didn't get it from there. I didn't necessarily see everything that I read as verbatim. And as I got older, it just reminded me of things that I already knew, that every time somebody wrote something down, if I write something down about you, it's going to be from my perspective. And so when I look at any material in that way, it's always going to be from the perspective of the writer. You can't help that. That's just the nature of people. So when I need to get to the truth, that's not always the way that resonates with me. And so I've always wanted to find that kind of truth. I had been in the hotel business all my life. Now that I know that's how I played out my service to others kind of persona while I was here, it seems to make sense to me. But until I had a TIA, it's a mini stroke, late in 2015. In my mind, the symptoms kind of came out of nowhere because I hadn't really been sick, ill, never really broke any bones, hockey player, so I've got lots of stitches. But surprisingly, this body kind of has lasted for 6+ decades. When I got to that point, there was something I needed to have done. I'd always lived by the way that my body would take care of itself, and it had. But that kind of knocked me for a loop in a way that nothing else had really affected my physical being. I had that procedure the first weekend in December to correct it. I had a wonderful surgeon who knew what he was doing and had a different technique. Anyway, to make a long story short, he had suggested that one of the remedies, because I was going to be recovering for the next 30 days, you might as well get used to that idea. And one of the things they suggested for therapy was meditation. Well, I'd always had an interest in understanding that. I would love to be able to get to that place where they say you can quiet your mind and just explore that connection to something higher. over the course of the rest of December and pretty much part of January, I tried every app, everything I could find to try it, just couldn't get to that place that I could quiet my mind again until I had listened to The Secret for the third time in my life. And in it, there are mentions to Transcendental Meditation. Well, that resonated with me. And I thought, did a little research, and if it was as simple as they say the technique is, then I was willing to try that. So when I began to research the availability of such a trainer, because they're not everywhere, and they're trained in a very specific way, it turned out that the trainer lived less than a mile from the house I was living in. So
Wow.
that was meant to happen. There are all kinds of benefits I had already understood, and by day 3 had understood stress, where it lied. Over time, it just eradicated high blood pressure I've had forever, rheumatoid arthritis, because I've been an athlete. All of that is gone. And it has been. I don't credit it to what's really happened over the last 2 years. I do credit it to meditation, because once I did that, I started to crave different things. Many things were changing in my life in terms of the way that I would eat and prepare food for family, and that all of that dynamic was changing. So I ate when I was hungry, I craved different things. And over a 6-month period, I went from 210 when I was in Louisiana to about 187 pounds. And that's where I've been ever since. So your body
Wow.
finds where it's supposed to be. And it wasn't an intent. It wasn't an intent that I want to get myself in shape and want to feel better. I just started to crave different things internally. And when I responded to that, everything just kind of shaved off the way it was supposed to. At the same time, my DNA seemed to be cracking open and making available things I knew, but I don't know how I knew them. And I don't know where I knew them from, but there was more and more of those kind of synchronicities coming along that they made me laugh. They started to happen so often. I was still consulting. In 2018, I had gone back to Baton Rouge to take on another casino project, a place I had been before, loved it, loved the community. I got family there. The area is beautiful, and it was just another opportunity for me to go fix another place. It was going to be great, but I got to about June of the last year, which would have been 2019. And it just felt like I was supposed to be doing something else somewhere else. And it just nagged at me. So by the time I got to November, in my head, I had already made up my mind. I needed to quit. Now, I had intended to continue to consult, but I was going to finish this gig. I was going to relocate to Las Vegas and work from there. Most of the consulting I got was from friends of mine that lived in Nevada and worked for Las Vegas companies. So I knew finding work wasn't going to be an issue. I just needed to kind of settle the dust. So when I left Louisiana, I was supposed to close on this place in February. But there was time in between for me to visit with my son. And so I decided I'm going to head to California, because I had about 10 days before I was going to close on the house in Vegas. And I'm going to go visit my son for 6 or 7 days, and then I'll go close on the house. But the whole drive there, there's something nagging at me going, don't close, don't close. Now I'm within this 30-day pocket where I know my escrow is going to be gone, but I kind of give into it. And I just know something's not right, and I don't know what it is. So I made that call I didn't want to make. I let this place go. And 3 days after I got to Alex's, COVID locked everything down. So that changed things a great deal. And it wasn't until July to kind of accelerate the story along before COVID relaxed enough that they were going to allow people and encourage them to get out and, exercise and whatnot. Well, I'm stir crazy to begin with. I don't want to say stuck at my son's, because I'm just blessed to have any place to go under the circumstances. No one's going anywhere. And my situation's complicated by the fact that now I'm in California on lockdown with a car that has Louisiana license plates, and my driver's license most currently is a Louisiana address too. So I can tell there's probably going to be some challenges doing what I want to do. But by the time we got to the first part of July, they had talked about these conditions relaxing. And so all I wanted to do was get in the car, go find nature. And the first thing, my impulse was go to the national parks in the Southwest. I'd been taken there before, and just there within those four corners right there, there's plenty of things out in nature to get lost in and find peace and solace. And while I was preparing to make plans to go there, I had heard a few reports that some of those parks might not even be open. And when that thought just left my head, the very next one in my head was Mount Shasta. Now, I'd driven by it many times, but I'd never been there. I kind of heard about, the magic that's there, whatever stuff is there that people experience, there's that going on up there. And so in the scheme of things, it's about 4 hours from where I am in Santa Rosa. So I decided to make the drive. The plan was I was going to go there for a week. And then my son and I were going to hook up the next week, maybe in Reno or Tahoe. Who knew? I mean, nobody was working. There was plenty of time to just spend time outside. But as I got closer to the first week in Shasta, and now you know what that energy is like, I contacted him and I said, this is beautiful. I'm going to stay for another week if you don't mind. He said, no, stay as long as you like. Well, the stay as long as you like turned into 5 weeks. I just kept hiking every day. And I don't hike along the paths that everyone else does, as you well know now.
Yes.
I like to go off-road to find those vortexes that you and I found and that the group found.
And other people found.
Well, that's good. The good news is that they're supposed to. We were supposed to identify them and mark them, and so that we leave our aura behind for the next one. So you're part of the plan. Anyhow, I had hiked like a young college. I thought I was like in the shape I was when I was playing hockey in college. I felt good every day, and it wasn't until the second week I had heard an older couple make a remark by their car on the energy that they had. That it was then that it occurred to me, every single day I had gone out and hiked rigorously, looking for waterfalls, looking for streams, looking for this and that. I didn't go to the same place twice, but I was up every day doing that. And I had to stop for a moment to analyze what the hell was going on, because there was something energetic. When my boots hit the mountain there is something about some energy there that you just connect to that's just like a perpetual recharge. That's not to say you don't need rest at the end of the day, but man, by 7 o'clock the next morning, I was ready to go again. I'm not a spring chicken, but I love being outside, and there's just something about that place that's just magical. So when I got closer to the end of the month, I had been wandering around the forest hoping to run into an ascended master. Look, if what I know about spirituality and what I've heard about Saint Germain is no legend, because they actually passed that information along to Guy Ballard back in the 30s, and Guy wrote countless books about his experiences and formed that Saint Germain Foundation. And people, they understood what that meant and what messages he was giving. It was an exciting time. So I had just hoped to run into an ascended master. Look, I'm out here all alone. It's just me and you. Come on, if you want to make some kind of contact that I can benefit myself or someone else, I'm here available. never in my wildest dreams did I think that the mountain was going to go open and I was going to be invited to see TELOS. All of these were not necessarily foreign ideas, but they weren't anything I had any knowledge of, at least at the time. But I was about to be invited in. That weekend, I had gone to the Peace Garden, which is a lovely place to start every day, right? You can spend a little time around the lavender labyrinth there, just kind of ground yourself, and then pick a place where you want to go hike. So I had finished that on this Friday, and then I was going to go up to the same spot where we sit at the picnic tables and decide what I was going to do for the rest of the weekend. I had Black Butte on my mind. Here's the last little mountain that I had not climbed. It's about 6,500 feet to get to the peak, and you can reach the peak. The recommendations online by people that have made that hike were most emphatically, don't do it.
Don't do it.
Of course, I didn't listen. I thought I could, and so I did, and I shouldn't have, for the record. I don't recommend that anybody else do it, but there are 2 times there when I should have turned back. It's nothing but scree, that kind of loose rock. It can be dangerous, but at the same time, it's just beautiful. And the perspectives from the top of it were well worth it. Took me longer to get down than to get up because I was exhausted. But that was one of those days when it really, the next day kicked in. By the time I got back to my room that day, and I already knew what I was going to do the next day, I was fatigued, and by 6:15, I'd finally showered. I was in my bed. I thought, I'm just going to lay in bed tomorrow on Sunday morning. Just going to sit here, turn the TV on, and then just kind of play it out and just recover. But by 7 o'clock, I get up every morning about the same time, and to me, it's a regimen. I meditate for around 20 minutes first, and it just starts my day off. And then after that, we just kind of see where it's going to go. So it's just habit that I still got up at 7 and I meditated, but I couldn't go back to sleep. By like 9 o'clock, I'm like, I got to get up. And by 10 o'clock, I had already made the decision. Okay, get up, get your clothes on, and we're going to go investigate. While we were sitting at those tables to figure out what I was going to do for the weekend, Black Butte was the one I chose to do first, and the other, while we were sitting at the picnic tables, and the perspective I'm talking about now, you look at Mount Shasta off there in the distance, and then here's Shastina up on the left-hand side. As this was right around noon, you can start to see the sun's directly over here and it's casting shadows. And a lot of those shadows look like they could be cave openings. So I was going to explore them. I love to find caves. It's my kind of thing. We did that, by the Mississippi River when I was a kid in St. Paul. I like that kind of thing. I'm a Capricorn, an earth person. So if you need any other more reasons, here they all are. And it didn't look like it was going to be a long hike to get to because I could see where I wanted to go from my perspective. I thought maybe it'd take 40 minutes, 45 minutes to actually hike there because a lot of it was going to be, there's no trail going where I want to go. You're just going to have to make your way up through some loose rock. But I thought it was going to be worth it. There are just pods over there of green around trees that you could even see from there that look like that's unusual because everything else here doesn't look that green and lush. There's something there to go explore. So I had made up my mind that day when I got back, that's what I was going to do. It was a typical Sunday. The parking lot was full. There's people coming and going, families, couples, everybody's parking and going off to hike. So I knew what direction I wanted to go in. And most people that went up Old Ski Bowl Trail like I did had up to head toward the peak. I took that trail where not too many take. You and I took it when we went to the vortex areas, but you rarely see people taking that trail. Well, I was going to take that to go in the direction of where I wanted to go. And then when I got close to where I was going to hike, well, then I'll worry about negotiating that when I got closer. So as I started to climb up that area, there were a couple of those green areas that I'd seen, and one in particular had like stones around it, and there was a tree in the middle of it. And you could just tell, man, there's some kind of different energy here. So as I got close to that and I was getting ready to just posture myself for a while and just kind of drink that in, I saw another one that was similar, but it was a little bit higher and over here. So I went to investigate that one. And when I got ready to explore that one and enjoy it, I saw one more that was like on the face of Shastina. There were 3 boulders that came out and formed this little area that actually you could climb over the rock and get into. And so I thought, well, how cool would that be? Well, when I did, you could tell, I looked off in the distance and I could zoom way out there. I could see where the parking lot is and where I was. Nobody can see me where I am for sure. But there's energy here that was different. It's similar to those pockets I found on the way up, but it just felt, man, something was charged. So like I do in most places, I anchored my light there in the way that I always do. And when I finished that, I sat down in this area. So now I'm enclosed in this cool little spot. Now I'm going to spend some time here. So I had some water and some grapes, and I was listening to music on my phone. And all of a sudden the music stopped. Well, I reached back because my phone was in my back pocket. When I went to see what the status was, there was no power on my phone. And when I started to see if I could fire it up again, now none of this made any sense because it was fully charged when I left the car, it wasn't even 40 minutes ago. And that particular model had a Mophie on, so I got battery galore here. That should not be the issue. But as I'm trying to figure out what's going on with my phone, I sensed almost like a shadow that was coming down where I was sitting. I'm sitting on the ground, so my butt and my legs are flat on the ground. My back is against the rock, and the only thing between me and her is dry brush. As this sensation comes over me here, it's like a shadow moving along my feet. And then there was almost like the same sensation, like a canopy over me. And when I turned around to kind of take that in, I felt a breeze from behind me. And when I turned, there's a hole where my back was, big enough for me to stand in and big enough for me to crawl over. When I stood up to look in, I could tell that there was a little rise that went up and then down. You know, in retrospect, in my mind, this is a lava tube. The area is full of it. This is volcanic area. This is just another lava tube. But as I'm looking down and my eyes are adjusting to the light, it looks like there's somebody down there. And if I had to guess, somebody about my size. And then the next thing I hear is someone ask me, do you wish to see TELOS?
Okay, so it wasn't like you saw someone who asked you the question. You heard that voice out of nowhere, basically.
I saw what I thought was somebody, and then I was asked if I wanted to see TELOS.
Okay.
So with half excitement and half, it's not terror, it's just energy, different energy. But look, I asked to be shown miraculous things. Now is not the time to buckle. So as I got closer, and he's a ways down, there is definitely somebody down there, and he is not my size. This guy's at least 2 feet taller than I am when I get close enough to see him. And he's wearing a white garb. It's got these, I call them ribbons because I don't know what else to call them. And one of these days, maybe I'll just ask the Lemurians what the heck they are, because I have a little bit different connection with them in the last couple of weeks. But I'm going to ask that question. I didn't know if that's some kind of decoration or some bling, or that's reminiscent of some kind of rank that he held. I never did ask that question, but I was there more as a student and an observer that day. I was just going to take it all in. So as I got closer, he said, well, you can call me Alex. I said, well, that'll be easy to remember. That's my son's name. He said, well, we know about your son, Alex. Follow me. And so we proceeded downward into this area. It felt as though we're going down.
So
And
before you go down there, I want you to tell me, what did he look like? Like, was the skin, like what kind of texture was the skin, the color, the hair? Tell me all the little details.
I have one word for it: flawless, flawless. And it took me a while to assimilate why. They're already crystalline form. They are ageless. They're not carbon-based bodies that are fragile like ours. They don't deteriorate. So I have no idea if he was hundreds of years old, thousands of years old.
Yeah.
I don't know the answer to that. In the form that he was in, this guy was flawless. Now, I understand them to be upper fourth density and fifth density,
Yes.
beings.
Yes.
But that is what we have to look forward to. You know that we're already ingesting some new light that is changing the way that we are going to be composed once Earth moves into her new place. And when she does, those triggers that activate that part of your DNA is already in place. You'll become crystalline. I had heard something yesterday. It's funny that all this kind of plays out the way that it does. In a channeling that a guy named Sam the Illusionist, that I have become a follower of since I heard about Sam 2 weeks ago, he had channeled something from Metatron. And it went on to say about those light workers that are aware of their crystalline content and what's about to come. He said to be well aware of the new moon conditions around the 28th, because there is an opportunity for you to take advantage of leveraging your crystalline form under that new moon. I don't know what that means, but I've taken it in because I've not questioned things I've been shown. And every time I see something magnificent. So if this is a way for me to just pay attention to it, because somehow I can trigger myself to take on that form now, sign me up for that. Sign everybody else up for that if that's their interest, because I really am curious about what that next level is going to be. It's not that we didn't have it before. We've had it in other times. We've gone back to the angelic realm. You choose your form while you're there. Now you're a light body there.
Yeah.
We just drop ourselves to take on different density to play this experiment out here. These are avatars. I know that's going to take some people that aren't used to hearing this from me, but I've come to terms with what this means and how it resonates. And I see it for what it is. We've had lots of incarnations. We've played all this out. And Earth is in a cosmic cycle that we just happen to be here at the right cosmic timing for this. We're going to be here when Earth grows up and she becomes this new Earth. We've been hearing about it for decades. We've been hearing about it in other incarnations for a long time, about the day that she is about to grow up. Here we are. I can't tell you, but it sure feels to me like the reason all these things are coming with such rapidity is that we're trying to get ourselves, whatever guides have come my way are like college cram coursing me. I get constant downloads all the time now with information getting us ready for what's coming next. I can't help but have that feeling all the time. And I'm not one who pays attention to it, but there is a feeling that something is shifting and we're preparing for it.
Yeah, absolutely. So his skin was our color or pale, more pale, or was?
If I had to characterize him, he looks Scandinavian to me. I'm Swedish. A large part of me is Swedish. So this resonated with me. He happened to have long blonde hair and flawless skin.
Okay, blue eyes. Oh, everybody
blue
had blue
eyes.
eyes. Okay.
The ones I saw, yes.
Okay.
I got to make contact eye contact with about 5 or 6 beings. And what was remarkable about that was that when I did, I had this sense that I knew them. Everybody that I had looked in their eye, I knew them, and like they knew me.
Mhm,
So I'm
mhm.
not sure what that plays out. I know more about what that means now, but at the time, it was just another remarkable, oh my God, I feel like I've been here before
Yeah.
because everything is so familiar. Um, I I skipped over, how we made that transition into the people that I saw. So
Yeah,
maybe I
yeah.
should
So
back up the
then,
truck
yeah, so
here.
when you were going down the thing, so I wanted you to describe him first. Okay, so now we're going back to when you started descending
Mhm.
into something.
Yes, I can see a light coming down from wherever the bottom is. Wherever we're heading, I can see that there's light down there. As we get closer, it's getting bigger and brighter. As we almost got to the bottom, I turned around to see where we came from, and there wasn't any light. So wherever I had come from, there was no evidence that there was any light from that source anymore. As I got down to the bottom and this opened up now, I call it a staging area because I don't know how to characterize it any other way. But directly in front of us, there's 5 more holes over there, these lava tubes. But next to us, when we came in, immediately on the left-hand side here, there's this platform, and it's like 6 foot, maybe by 6 foot, and has what appears 2 bounce seats on the top. There's another one over further there in the staging area, and there's another one over off to my right. Well, as I'm kind of looking through this, Alex has made his way and sat down on the other side and indicated for me to sit next to him on the other one. So as soon as I got into this platform and my butt hit the seat, we're off and levitating. We're moving as though it felt like we weren't going anywhere. You know that sensation when you're moving and you feel air? You didn't feel any of that, but you're moving nonetheless.
Mm.
And the remarkable part about this tube is as we were getting to the other side, we took the middle tube. I don't know if the other ones went off in different directions. I can only speak to the one I went to. But as we were getting to the other side and the light was coming from the other side, you could tell that this place was lined with crystals. And every time you just moved an iota, the light would hit it in a different way. It was like a living kaleidoscope going through there. It was magnificent, and I didn't want it to stop.
Of
But when
course.
it did, it's because when we got through the opening on the other end and I got to witness TELOS for the first time, he took whatever you want to call this device up to, you've seen skiddy-scape shots and photographs. That's what I'm seeing of the perspective of TELOS. It's circular in nature, and in the middle of it, and all of the buildings are crystalline. Except in the middle, there's a huge white pyramid with a capstone on the top. He had told me a lot about the king and queen of Telos and how they rule, and what the council really does, who they are. So there was a lot of narrative that was going along, and among that, he was telling me about this capstone that had been gifted to them by Venus. Apparently, this pyramid, and there are many temples on this level, there's 5 levels, can hold 10,000. And I didn't know this fact until after. There's a woman, sweet woman, Diane Robbins, who's written a couple books on Telos as well. And she lives in Mount Shasta and was sweet enough to agree to see me. So I've spent a couple of times with her getting to know things about her. And after my first trip, and when I began to talk about what I saw, she had told me after, she said, I got a piece of information that I'd never put in any of my books, but I want you to know this. And it's in alignment with what you told me you saw. She said, you said that the capstone you saw was white that day. She said, well, the capstone moves like this. Depending on the day of the week, it is a different color. It was white because it was Sunday and you were there on Sunday. Had it been Wednesday, it would have been indigo. Had it been Saturday, it would have been green. Oh my God. She had sent me this draft that she had put down of the days and the conditions in Telos And so every time I share this with somebody else, there's a little piece of information they knew that they had not shared until this time. Anyway, back to this, because I'm tending to get ahead of myself, and I don't want to do that, because I really want to set a good foundation of this, so that when we talk about what all of this experience means, what the impact is, not just for me, but for everybody else, that you have a really good idea of what happened here that day.
Absolutely.
I was not on a meditative journey. This was a physical experience. And it's important for people to understand that as we talk about differences in dimensionality, my visit to Telos was stepping into the next dimension. I was ready for that experience. All the conditions for me to experience that were in place. So that's why it happened. But I can tell you that had other people been with me vibrating at the same level, they would have seen the same thing. It's all about vibration. And I'm learning that more and more. This was the teaser. Looking back, and I've been having discussions with some other people about, the dynamics of all of this, and how do you present it and how do you talk about it. My trip to Telos is like some friends of mine who have now been on spacecraft and take pictures from inside the spacecraft. Not everybody experiences this. So you got to get used to the idea that those things have happened. But in both of our cases, it's the bait. It's the extraordinary experience we had to get your attention, so that we can explain to you there's changes coming, and these are the types of experiences you should expect to have. You are going to be able to reach into the next dimension if you're ready for that. And now it's about vibration. I say it with, I don't want to use the word urgency, because I don't want to charge my intent with anything that would appear to be negative. The more I can keep it positive, believe me, the more that's what's returned to us. So that's the energy I'd put into it. But at the same time, I'd be foolish if I didn't recognize how many things have happened to me, and it's so fast that I can't not pay attention to what's going on and begin to share that with people that resonate. I need to get that foundation built, so then we can all begin to help those that are going to start to question the things that they sense are happening now, but don't have a freaking clue as to what it is. Here's where tribe is all showing up to kind of just be touchstones for one another. But everybody has an extraordinary experience to share. And I don't want to diminish that. We need to celebrate those for what they are. We've asked for miracles to show up. Here they are. They really want more and more. And my experience there was evidence. They want us to know they're there. They want to know us to know that they're there waiting for us, and what is going to happen once they can reintegrate with people on the surface. They have lots of things to share with us. And we'll be vibrating at a level where we can do that. It's extraordinary. I've seen what's coming. I've seen what that culture and that civilization is like. It is nothing like this experiment that we're done with. And it wasn't that humanity decided we've had enough, we're going to correct all of our misdeeds, and somehow we're going to raise our vibration, and everyone's going to be happy. That's not how this functions. People are still sovereign beings, and they have their own choices and their own sovereignty to make those decisions. I respect that, and I respect it for people that respect it within me. So given that, that's what I think all of us are first. Now we get to make our choices on the lessons that we come to learn with each incarnation. Earth was an experiment in duality. So we could drop into this density and learn all this physicality to help the universe evolve. Every lesson I learn goes to my Akash. And in the end, it goes into the collective's Akash. So the things that I learned, the good ones and the bad ones, and the ones that you've learned, the good ones and the bad ones, sooner or later, we all benefit from the collective. When you go back to report what you've done and record all that into the real Akashic Records Hall, the entire collective benefits from that. When you get back to this next level, look at all the things that have happened. I really, in representations I've seen of history in the United States, just let's do that. Just from the time from 1776 and think about what those conditions were through the 1800s, 1900s, and into 2000s. Think of how far we've come just in the 1900s. From after World War II and all the technologies, look at how fast we did that. Hell, we've been here for thousands of years before that. Look at how fast and rapid that came. It's an indication that we're still evolving, but now we're getting to a place where if you can start to believe in cosmic terms, and the trouble is we've never been fed any of this information before. So we have to find it in other places and still use our discernment to see what resonates with us, to see if we really believe it. If I really tell you that the Earth was constructed as interstellar conveyance satellite to begin with, you'd probably think that I was out of my mind. But if I told you how that construction was made in the cosmic scheme of things, that's exactly what it was. There was a star that was placed inside of her that made her the energy source she is. And originally there were 12 crystal pyramids that were placed to establish her grid. So here was the blueprint for all of it before she became a planet. And those things, she was a star. And she has been, she still is. The core of inner Earth is still in that original 7th dimensional state. She's still there. Nothing's changed about that. We fail to see her. And right now it's kind of exciting, and it makes me giggle at the same time that we're so busy thinking about ourselves going from 3rd to 5th dimension. Never mind. Earth was 7, and that's what we're trying to get back to.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
until we really take all that in, and that's a whole nother rabbit hole to go down. It's just another layer of information we need to build so people have an understanding for if we really claim to have connections extraterrestrially. Not that we're looking in the sky for those moving lights. We've all seen them. We know they're here.
Right.
I'm talking about something entirely different. I'm talking about beings that are here in another dimension that if you vibrated in the same way, you would also see them here too. That is what we're moving toward. And it's not going to be that long before you're going to have those experiences. You hear about many of them that people are having now.
Yeah.
They somehow have found the way to vibrate. And when they see and say fairies, they mean it. I've seen them myself. It's crazy. And I've gotten to the point where I've been able to photograph them. So
it's about, yeah, it's about energy, about your vibration. Absolutely. That you'll be able to have those experiences. So take us back to the pyramid. You were explaining about the pyramid on the top. That what you were seeing. The pyramid
was just, it was the most remarkable part of all of it, but the whole rest of the city was just beautiful. When we left there and he brought this craft down from where it had hovered so high so I could see all of the city, that's when we came down and I could see pockets of people here and there and I could make eye contact with them. And that's when I'd said everyone I could, and I want to say there were 5 or 6 that I did that I knew who they were and they knew who I was.
That's
now,
crazy.
Since then, 2 of those faces I've seen here. One of them was when I had met Reuben Langdon and we had talked about doing an episode for interview with ED. His co-producer, Steve's girlfriend, Barbara, is one of those faces I saw. And the other one is a good friend, Kathy, that I met through Mickey Magic too. And Kathy, when she looks like a Lemurian now, she's tall and blonde and she just strikes that. Kathy is the other face that I saw there. So these things are not deniable.
But you saw them after you had the experience, not before. Like,
Yes.
recognize them after having the experience. Okay. Okay. Wow. Fantastic.
So then we make our way to the third level, which is their hydroponic gardenings. And he described, you're looking at 7 acres of it here, and it's just amazing. It's not in ground. It's not that kind of
They don't use dirt, right?
gardening.
They weren't
They
using,
don't use dirt.
it's all water,
It's
hydroponics, all
water and
water.
it's crystal infused, and that
Crystal
is the only
infused.
thing that they've used there. Now,
Okay.
I've learned many things since then, because I had a puzzle still in my head. If it was true that when Lemuria finally got to Mount Shasta after the catastrophe had taken place, it was said that 25,000 of the 200,000 they prepared for actually made it. So this food, because they're all vegetarian when they eat, and you got to wonder, even though it perpetuates at such a rapid rate and the food's so crazy healthy, that I still have questions about whether it could feed the populace, especially considering that it's been said now that there were 1.2 million. And even more recently, someone suggested 1.5 million, which would not be unreasonable over time, that there's that many of them there. Again, my head just goes, how can this feed all those people? Well, I have an answer for that. And here it is. They're crystalline bodies. They don't need to sustain their bodies with food because they're not carbon-based. They get all their energy from the sun. That's where, and when we intake our food, we're doing the same thing. We're just adapting to a more dense circumstance here, a more dense environment. They don't do that. They eat for the joy of it, not because they need to. That was a realization that came in, and it just makes sense to me. It's all reasonable. If they're crystalline bodies, of course, they're not going to have to fuel their body. And whatever they do ingest, they use every bit of the energy. So it's not that they have to worry about where the next restroom they have to hook up with is. That's not how they process energy. We're just stuck in this density, and that's the way these bodies, these avatars, these biosuits that we occupy, that's how they function.
Okay.
That's not where we're going. That's not how our next biosuit functions.
Did you see a sun there? Because you said they feed from the sun. Did you see a sun there, or is it our
I'm glad
sun
you
that
asked that question, Noah, because that was another thing that occurred to me as I looked up in whatever this cavity was at the beginning. I could not see the top of it, and yet everything was lit up like daylight. Not that there was beams of light that came from the source. Everything was lit up like daylight, but upon thinking about it after, there were no shadows that were cast by anything. So there's got to be some other type of crystal energy that they've understood. Of course, they understand how to, make that be light when they need it to be.
Okay.
Look, they're fourth dimensional beings that can manifest what they wish.
Right. Exactly. So they're getting the energy from but whatever that light is. Okay.
I think it's crystal sourced. I believe that because there's so much of it there.
Yeah.
Everything is framed out of it. I always had this idea about Black Butte. If you've driven by it on I-5 and it's next to Shasta, to me, I think if you dusted off all that scree on it, to me, I think it's the tip of a quartz crystal. And then its purpose is to amplify the energy that comes from Mount Shasta. That's what I think her purpose is.
Okay. Very interesting. So then once he took you to see the different levels and you're seeing when you saw the buildings, were they like New York, where they're really tall buildings, or are we talking about just 2-3 story buildings?
They
made
were
of crystal.
2 and 3 stories, and they were more rounded in nature than you don't see like hard lines.
Right.
Everything was just softer in that environment. Just it was more sacred geometric, if you know
Yes.
that would resonate. To
Yeah.
me, that's it, just screams that to me, as opposed to what we see of pictures of Manhattan from the sky and type.
Right.
It's definitely not that.
Okay. 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 Very cool. So then, how is he speaking to you? What, how is he understanding you?
They do speak a kind of English that to me sounds some version between British and Australian. There's kind of a twang to it. It sounded like that to me.
Okay.
I can't put my finger on it, but I understand in order for what we're going to understand here, they are not going to be speaking language. They're going to pick English, French, German. They don't speak like that. When we begin to communicate with them more now, you're going to see most of it's going to be sound. So music, especially lyric-less music, that speaks vibration, symbols, color. There's the way you communicate.
Okay.
Now, we already can, our intuition speaks to one another. Here's where you understand you're already connected to one another. So you pick up on each other's intuition. It doesn't mean that we still are not independent souls, because we are on our own little journeys. But man, I can't wait till we get to the point where the collective is where you know you belong and you have a contribution. You are not a soldier lined up to be like everybody else when we get to the other side. No, you were a creative, specific spark of source that had your own journey, your own ways to help the universe evolve. You chose your own lessons, good and bad, that was going to be your contribution. And they weren't supposed to be like anybody else's, and neither were mine.
Yep.
That's what makes us all valuable in the end. All those things that are getting stored into the Akashic records for the rest of us when we get to the next level are just more of what we have had over the incarnations you and I have had. Wait to see what kind of force to be reckoned with we will be when all of those experiences and all of the resources we have, all of the power we have in the next dimension are restored to us, because we've been struggling here in this experiment, but the experiment's done.
Okay.
Okay, so after we've looked at these gardens, now we've made our way back up to the first level. And when I first came in, there was a rounded building off to the kind of the right that I saw that caught my eye. And it turns out that's where we're going back to. Well, this is the council chambers. I didn't know that until later. But when we got that, it's rounded, but it's made by a series of these crystal panels. And as I got closer to the entryway, which was about the same size as French doors, but no doors, there were etchings on both sides that sure looked like I'd seen these before. To me, they look like light codes or star codes or whatever you want to call them. And when I made that remark to Alex, I said, these look familiar to me. And he goes, oh yeah, those are Haruko's. They're damn accurate. And so that's why we've etched them here. This one is the New Earth. I can't remember exactly the name for it, but that was for New Earth. And this one is called the New Angelic Code. It's the New Human Blueprint. Those are etched into the outside of the council walls. It's just magnificent. So when we go in, there's a round wooden table. It's the only wooden thing I've seen anywhere. There's a round wooden table with 13 chairs around it, and this is where the council meets. There are 6 female and 6 male, highly spiritual beings that serve on the council, and they're there to maintain balance. 13th chair is for Adama because he's the high priest.
And
So
they're
as
all
we,
super tall, right? I think you had mentioned they were all really like 8 foot.
yeah, I've seen one of them I'd seen so far was Alex. He was 8 feet tall. There wasn't anybody I saw that was shorter than I was that day so far. So as we got in this room, there was a sensation that I started to feel. It was a pulse that if you could articulate a hug, that kind of really deep hug, that's what was like pressing into my core, my heart core. The entire time I was in this space, it just felt like pummeled isn't the right word. One day I'll think of what the right word should be for this experience, and I don't know that it exists yet. The entire time I was in there, you just felt this love that just kept impressing itself into your heart core. So if that's the way that all of these others express themselves, man, it was powerful. So while I'm getting adjusted to this, I see 5 more people are moving in the room from over there. And I can tell the one in the middle is Adama. Only from photographs I've seen on books, but let me tell you something, those photographs do not do this guy justice. Then there were 2 females that were flanking him on either side. And when they got closer, they invited me to take a seat. And then they positioned themselves 3 on this side of me and 3 on that side. They began by telling me, who they were and explaining a little bit about themselves. And respectfully, I can only remember the first woman's name. It was easy for me to remember Adama and Alex because I had a little more contact with them. But Shyama, I'm going to remember, because when we begin dialogue, it's she that seems to be chairing this meeting. She was going to be doing the speaking, not Adama. She was going to explain what I was doing there. That the council had been meeting for a while and that they had come to the conclusion that winter solstice 2020, which was then, was the day that they sensed that the shift was imminent too. So first of all, to me, take that in, over the last several months, I had, through the rabbit holes, kind of come to the same conclusion that if there was going to be a time, man, this sure seemed to line up. So make your preparations accordingly. I know what I was thinking, and it's not like you can shout any of this to people. That's not what I'm saying. And that's certainly not what I'm intending to do. But there are a certain number of people that are ready for this message and know what's coming. So here, now it's my job to reveal the things that I've learned that I'm supposed to pass on to the next ones. The fact that they agreed with it just blew me away to begin with. Then I was about to find out why it was going to be me. Well, first of all, they said, you've already demonstrated that you can hold 5th dimensional awareness. Now that's a mouthful. And people say, well, what does that really mean? Well, until you really see things from that perspective and can rule out duality, I'm not saying that it doesn't exist, and neither do they, but they see beyond it. And if it is an issue for the collective, here is where the individual gifts come to play, and they come up with solutions in that matter. You see why I can't wait till we get to that culture where we're solution oriented and loving instead of pointing the finger at somebody that didn't get it right. Yeah, I'll be glad when those days are over, but that's where we're headed. So the second reason was they said, we know you're the protector of Gaia. Now, I don't know how they knew that phrase because it had only been uttered in an ayahuasca journey 2 years before that. That's who Mother Ayahuasca told me I was on the second journey. I didn't know what that meant. So I just kind of tucked it away. And then the third was that they were hoping when the time came and Earth's vibration matched, and when the time came for them to reintegrate, they had asked if I would consider being an emissary. Well, I was humbled and shocked, and what pops into your mind is why me, but you never utter those words because you don't want to be, you don't want them to hear that. So then Adama said the only thing he spoke was that the entire council was unanimous about their decision and what their belief was. And we hope that you'll agree to be an emissary when the time comes. The only thing I responded with or said the whole time was I would be honored. And with that, the meeting was over. They got accomplished what they wanted to get accomplished, and they had bowed and they left the room. In the meantime, Alex and I make our way back to the platform, and we're back to the staging area, where I do have a couple of questions that I would like to ask. The first one is, can I return? And he said, yes, you'll be able to return before the ship. Well, I don't know what that means. And I realize now that we're in the middle of the shift. That question about, well, nothing happened back in winter solstice. You have no idea. This is a process that's in the freaking middle of it. Who's to say the day that we finally pop from the third dimension into the fourth? I see it as though we're passing through a membrane, and that we're not most of the way through. Because I think once we get to 51%, then she just pops, and Earth is into her next generation. But man, we all know that we're in here. We feel the differences in these two dimensions. Here is evidence that we're playing on both sides of this, and more of us are getting aware to what's on the other side. And my second question was, can I tell anybody about this? And he kind of laughed and he said, well, yeah, the council is unanimous in this regard as well. You can tell anybody you want, and we want you to. One, no one's going to find their way down here unless we help them, because you didn't with our assistance. But the other thing is, we want them to know we're here. We want them to know we're here, so that when the time comes, it's not going to be a real shock. We are excited as much as you are for this reunion to take place. We're just waiting for the day that happens.
When you saw Shyama, how was she dressed? More womanly like, or?
She was still in white. Everybody was in white that day. But yeah, they're all remarkable. It wasn't, I can speak to her the second time I saw her more eloquently. So I'll kind of answer that question by zooming through. The next year, I wanted to go back to that spot and see what I saw. I just needed to go back and touch it again to find out, what had happened to me and what would happen again. To make a long story short, it was before the road had opened, and I was determined to get back to that spot. So I hiked over 15,000 steps that day, several elevation changes to get back to that place so I could see it for myself. Now, the good news when I got there is I had it all to myself. I mean, the road had been closed like 3.5 miles down. Nobody was coming up here unless they came the same way you did. And it took me 4 hours to get there. But when I did, I went up to that same spot. But no, things have changed since the last year I was here. I was seeing energetic portals as I was coming through the forest. That's why it took me 4 hours to get there. I'd stopped on 4 different occasions on things that I saw that were really cool anomalies, took pictures of them, and took compass settings. Because these were areas that, if anybody has been here before, it's been a long time since anyone's been here, but these look like little fairy hamlets and just lush, those kind of areas I was describing before, more of them. And they're not typical on a mountain like this. Given what's around it, it's not typical to see that much energy in that form. It's just remarkable.
So about Shyama's dress,
when I got back there that day, this time as I was coming up to the portal, I can see energetic signatures now. They stand out to me like heat coming off a sidewalk, but with form.
Form.
So as I got closer, I could see against this rock where this had been energetically.
Ah, okay.
But when I got there, I did what I do every time I got there. I looked back at the area that I came from. I had planted my light again. And as I was finishing that, I felt the breeze from behind me again. And when I turned around, I saw her standing inside. So here is an 8-foot tall being wearing a green, like a dress that would appear to be holographic.
Okay.
It just shined.
Mm-hmm.
And so she's remarkable and shocking and beautiful. And her voice is interesting. And the first thing she said to me, she said, so they call you STARBUCK now. Well, I don't know how the hell she knew that, but she led with that. And then I wanted to say, she was just on the inside of that area I described before. 2 steps out and you're here on the other side. And what I wanted to ask her was, you're this close, why don't you step out? And before she even answered, I knew the answer to the question. And it was, if she stepped over here, she had to drop her vibration in order to do that.
Oh.
And so I thought, who would do that?
Right.
And she said, well, you did. I said, yes, I guess I did. Then we went to talk about what I thought about, and you'll know what this means, and many others won't, what I thought of Ethereum finding its hands into a master alchemist again, what I thought about that, because it hadn't been too long after that it had been gifted to me. Now, you see how the dots are beginning to connect in ways that they have no reason to connect.
Yeah.
How would she have known those things?
Yeah.
So we went on to kind of talk about what I can't share yet.
Okay.
But about the last 15 or 20 minutes, we just looked at Shasta the way that you can when it's unspoiled and there's no one else there. And now you've been there, you know what I'm talking about. At the end, we kind of concluded that, drink it in, because 3D is beautiful. Here it is. Enjoy it while it lasts.
Yeah. So in that second time, she stayed in her spot and you stayed in your spot. You didn't go inside.
Yes.
Okay. Got it. Okay. So the conversation was just with her.
When you vibrate here, you don't need to be inside anywhere. I get to appreciate things at my level of vibration and see things that others can't around me. And I'm not saying I see that in a shopping mall. That's not where these phenomena take place. But I can tell you, when I get out in nature and when there's a little more quiet and peace, because that's really when you find it. There's a difference that somebody pointed out again to me yesterday between listening and hearing. And when you start to just listen to nature, then you hear what she's saying. And that phenomenon is different. Oh my goodness. Over the last 3 weeks, I have learned that I somehow have recalled the ability to understand star language, and not a star language, multiple star languages. I've had it uttered at me, and after I listened to it for the 3rd time, I understood what was being said. I have some photographs of some artifacts that I was shown by this wonderful hybrid that came my way, across my path. And I took pictures of them, which people don't get to see them, much less take pictures of them, because they were covered with codes, knowing that one day I wanted to understand what those meant. Over the last few weeks, I just had this thing inside of me. I wanted to go back and review them. So I did. And I understand what they say and what the codes mean. And I began to find on a couple of these pipes, 3 of the artifacts were ceremonial pipes. 2 of them had similar markings, but were not found in the same places. Wow. So I'm continuing to uncover other things that I was supposed to understand, help others when I show you these pictures of what
Yes.
I've been able to see. Here's what they mean. And why does this one have the same symbol that one has? It's another rabbit hole.
Another rabbit hole that we will talk about for sure in some other day. So,
Yes.
okay. So then let's finish up for today. So how does this amazing, beautiful story end?
It took me a while. When I got back, I'm going to finish that
But
day.
how did they take you back? Yes. Like you're
Yeah.
done. Adama walks out. What happens next?
Well, I found my way back to the park when that was all done. Once I was finished in the staging area, I found myself back in the spot where I had been sitting.
Mm.
And so somehow I
What?
just made my way from there back to the parking lot. You know where it is.
So
So
so you don't know what happened from the time Adama walked out to the time that you find yourself
they
outside of
left,
it?
we left the room, and then we took that craft back to the staging area. What portal in my mind now opened up between there and the spot where I had come in,
Uh-huh.
that was like seamless. But
Okay.
now that certainly is reasonable to me,
Yep.
knowing what we know
Yep.
about what happened with people who definitely walked through some kind of portal while
Yep.
we were there.
Yeah.
Because anyway, that's a story for another day too. But it's just proves our point that these phenomenon are taking place that maybe we can't understand with our human little brains, but they're taking place nonetheless. So the more they happen, the more we catalog these things away.
Mm-hmm.
But I've stopped questioning them and just, watched the results.
Yeah.
I had got back to my room, and there was a woman who I had started to research everything I could about TELOS and anything. There's a woman who lives in Mount Shasta. Her name's Asara Adams. And when I met Ruben Langdon, who does this 3 series of episodes of people that have remarkable experiences like mine. Some are channelers, some are experiencers.
Yeah.
Yes. Yep. She's one of those, and she's been channeling Adama for a while, at least 10 years. I had reached out to her to see if anybody knew anything. I found contact information, so I called her and left whatever message I could. Bless her heart, she called me back 45 minutes later, and for 2 hours, she listened to me on the phone. And when we got to the end of that, she did something similar to what Diane had said to me, that she said, when you were describing it, there are some things that I've seen that I've not been allowed to talk about, but you described them. So I know you were there. I know you were there.
Yeah, I'm sure when you came out, you're like, did I imagine this? Was this a meditation? What the hell was this? I mean,
I got to the parking lot,
question
looked at all of these people wondering,
yeah,
no one knows what I just came
right.
out. What happened to me? So when I found some touchstones, Asara was the first one. And actually, Ruben, when he came into the story, had heard about my experience somehow through the little channels in Mount Shasta. And he was on his way to interview Asara 3 days after I left. So when things went like this, he had asked her. He said, yeah, I heard about this guy, Lowell Johnson, that made his way in here. And she had meant, yeah, he reached out to me. They didn't cover that in the interview there, but we did in mine. And I said, here's what happened. And he even said, she told me too, that there were things that she said she had seen that you mentioned that she had never talked about before. And when she said that to me, I said, well, why haven't you ever talked about it before? She says, I'm not allowed to. There'll be a day when I can. They tell me the things I can tell you about, and there are things that I can't tell you about. That's one of the things I'm not allowed to tell you about. But it looks like things are beginning to relax. So, when I get validation like that, it's crazy enough. There's a part of me, the 3D part, that can easily think this is all really a crazy illusion. But you don't have these many things lining up out of nowhere with resources that nobody knew before. The last one was between an Australian filmmaker and a young Indian channeler who uttered my name in a Lemurian channeling session.
Oh, really? And how did you find out about this?
Because this filmmaker made his way to Shasta while we were there. He has been going around the world filming extraordinary phenomenon and ran into this young man in India that channels higher beings. His name's Sam the Illusionist. So he had gone and met with Sam in May and had heard about my story and asked Sam. He said, yeah, I heard about this. Can you tell me what you know about Mount Shasta? Because I understand the Lemurians are there. And I heard about this guy named Lowell Johnson that's been inside there. And so I've just had this more interest in tell us, what can you tell me? Well, back then, Sam said he kind of yeah-yeah-yeah when he heard about me. He didn't address it. But he said, yes, I don't know about a lot about it because Adam wanted to know what it's like, what the technology is like, what it's like on the inside. And he said, I never asked that question, but I'll ask it in my next sessions. But yes, it's always been postured that the Lemurians are broadcasting from TELOS, from within Mount Shasta. So later, Adam and I begin to communicate. And the last I heard, he's in Croatia, making his way to Shasta in time for us to find 2 days overlap when he actually be able to touch the guy that said he's been here. So when he got there, it was while we were all there for the conference. He had reached out to Sam and he told me he was going to do that. He said, is there anything you want me to have Sam ask on your behalf? And I said, no, I can't really think of anything. But what are you going to ask somebody like that? So he had gone into this channeling. He asked Sam to channel while he was there. And he wanted to know 3 things. He wanted to know, first of all, whether he would be able to visit TELOS while he was there that week. 2, he wanted to know about their technologies and wanted to know a little bit more about them. And then he wanted, this guy, Lowell Johnson, what can you tell us about him? So he got his answers on the first 2. And then here comes Sam channeling the answer on who Lowell Johnson is and what his purpose was. Yeah, it's a YouTube video. I had to listen to myself. So when you hear your name being uttered like that, at first it's a little shocking, but holy cow, how does that happen?
That's crazy.
Yes.
That is crazy. Wow. Wow.
That's my life, pal. I thought TELOS was an episode. It's a fucking documentary.
It was just the beginning.
Excuse my language.
Yes.
Oh my God. Yes.
It was the beginning of cracking that shell of really bringing out Lowell as that spiritual master, right? That's going to now take a different life really for you. This is going to be, that was the beginning of the mastery.
That's a big thought to hold. And it can be even a little arrogant to think that way. But here's what my guides have been telling me to tell the rest of you. And so I'm going to say this every time I get the opportunity to. You've learned everything that you're going to learn from your teachers. You shouldn't, I hate words, the sentences that begin that way. Consider this perspective, that the people that you've learned things from, where you were meant to learn from, they're no longer the resource for that knowledge and wisdom. You are. It's time for you to recognize your own mastery and that all the things you were supposed to learn, you did. The things that you were supposed to pick up from others, you did. And so now you're a master unlike anybody else. The time for you to step into your mastery, you and everyone else listening, is now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I know that there has been some major things that have happened to you ever since then. And, we have
Yes.
to cover, I want to cover the pictures with the light beings and all that amazing stuff. So of course we'll have to that. But to close out this amazing journey into Telos, um, I have a couple of questions about what happened in there. Um, and one of them is, did you see anybody else other than those beings? Like when you were looking at the city, were there people walking around? I mean, did
Mhm.
you see any
There
other
were pockets
activity?
of people, a little bit, just people here and there, in groups of twos and threes, just a few here and there. Um, I wish I would have had more time to kind of just take it all in so I could
Yes.
describe what their culture's like and what I thought they were doing on that corner.
Yeah.
There wasn't time for that. But I recognize now that although I understood that I had the ability to go back there anytime I wished, I never really knew what that meant and then didn't take advantage of it until Sam the Illusionist came along. And he reminded me that I one of the purposes I served here in this capacity as Lemurian who came back and incarnated on this side to be an emissary for them when the time came. I know that's a role that I chose to play. Um, I was going somewhere with this thought and it'll come back to me.
Okay.
And
Okay. And the other question was, did you feel like you were home? I know you
yes,
said that you recognized the faces, but did you feel like almost like a feeling of being home?
I had been there before and it was comfortable and a place I wanted to return to.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay. Wow. Beautiful. Beautiful experience. Well, I know that it's an experience that I have not heard of anybody else having it, the physical experience. Lots of people channeling Telos, lots of people, but to me, that's very, very unique experience. And, one that I think definitely should be put in a book. So are you planning on writing a book or anything like that?
Yeah, I am actually, and I've been journaling all along the way. That's what I think part of the reason why it was me that was chosen for this particular adventure is that it was my nature to kind of journal, thoughts that I had. I was thinking of profound things that I didn't understand where they came from. And I thought one day this is going to be interesting. So I've been doing that all along the way and taking pictures. So it was one thing when I took pictures of, I thought, beautiful things. When someone started to take pictures dimensionally with me in them, that's a whole nother thing. And now I understand what the purpose for that was. That purpose was so that we're going to hear more and more stories of people that have had extraordinary experiences. And there's going to be those people that are going to be questioning those things. In my case, I was set up with a portfolio of here's my experience and here's the pictures to prove it. Um,
That's super, super powerful, super powerful. And I really can't wait to share with everybody what those pictures look like. That's just going to be amazing. But for now, Lowell, I want to thank you so much for your time and for being here, and stay on with me once we say goodbye. But really, thank you for being here, for telling us this story, for agreeing to be an emissary as well, and for, being the amazing you that you are.
Thank you so much. We're not done. There's more to cover, as you know. You asked me about the book. That's what this flag. At what point do I stop when my life continues to go on? So we're going to figure something out. But yes, I've been documenting a lot of stuff. So it's just a matter of taking all that stuff and putting it into a book. But where I thought the book was going to be about this extraordinary experience I had in Telos, now you know what's happened over the last 2 years, and that's a whole different story to tell now. There's much more to fill in there, and as extraordinary as Telos is, and I'm not taking anything away from that, what happened with light beings last summer was a whole nother level.
And then also the emerald tablets. I want you to talk about that as well, and that information too. So, because there's
We'll
a
get to
lot
it all.
there. Yeah, there's a lot there to uncover as well. So it's going to be just a mind-blowing experience for sure.
Well, I love doing this, and there's a purpose why you and I are doing this now too. I had a blast when we got together. We shouldn't have had to leave Shasta when we had to,
I
but we'll
know.
find our way back there again.
Yes, I
Because we're
believe
not
that.
done exploring what needs to be done there. And now that you know where to find energetic portals,
Yes.
you know where to show others, and that's how Sid got what he got the next day, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. So, again, thank you, Lowell. And thanks everybody for watching. I hope to see you soon in the next video. Thank you for being here. Take care, everybody.